On the 19th day before the calends of September, in the 14th year after the birth of Christ, Augustus dies at Nola. The old architect of the empire, exhausted by years of war and peace, goes out like a torch at the end of its wax. Around his bed, faces lean in. The doctors murmur. His close ones hold their breath. Then the news spreads, first in the corridors, then in the streets, finally throughout the empire. The Father of Peace is no more. In Rome, the Senate trembles and straightens up. The doors of the temples open, white togas glide over the marble. The name of Augustus still floats on people's lips, but already another name advances. Tiberius. Adoptive son, chosen in the year 4, woven into the fabric of destiny by the solemn act of adoption. He is not loved like Germanicus, nor cherished like a new son. But he is there, necessary, inevitable, wrapped in a dark gravity. The Principate does not die with Augustus. It remains, an invisible framework beneath the ruins of the Republic. The comitia survive, empty shells where the crowd gathers without real power. The Senate sits, speaks, deliberates, but its decisions bend to the gaze of the princeps. The whole edifice rests on a single man, like a bridge on a single arch. Around this bridge watches a guard, the Praetorian Guard. Created by Augustus, chosen from among the best soldiers of Italy, it encamps near Rome, divided into units that watch over the city and the throne. It bears iron and cuirass, but it also holds destiny. For the one who commands these men does not only protect the prince, he controls access to his ear, filters petitions, opens or closes the door of power. This command does not fall to the great men of the Senate, but to men of another rank, the equestrian order. Knights of Rome, rich without being noble, powerful without being sacred. From this group arises a name that the chronicles will never cease to repeat: Lucius alias Sejanus. He comes from a house not made illustrious by triumphs, but by closeness to the shadows. His father, Lucius Seius Strabo, already wears the cuirass of the Praetorian prefect under Augustus. In the discreet alleys of power, Strabo walks beside invisible legions. The son watches, listens, learns. He observes the comings and goings of the senators, the silences of the emperor, the gestures of impatience, the fears that are not spoken but are written in the eyes of the powerful. Tacitus's annals name him, firmly, as one points a finger at the heart of a tragedy. Suetonius unrolls his shadow alongside that of Tiberius. Cassius Dio inscribes his face in the great murmur of history. All converge. There, in the middle of Tiberius's reign, a figure rises, assistant at first, master later. Sejanus enters the equestrian career like a swimmer entering a river whose currents he already knows. He does not come from a naive periphery, but from the very core where one learns the language of murmured orders, measured favors, suggested threats. At the side of his father Strabo, he shares command of the guard. 2 prefects for a single emperor, 2 hands on the same sword. Then comes the shift, almost silent. Strabo is called elsewhere, far from Rome, perhaps toward Egypt, that granary of the empire whose key is entrusted only to those who inspire absolute confidence. Rome keeps the son. The father goes away, the son remains alone at the head of the Praetorian Guard. One generation leaves the stage, the other steps forward to the edge of the proscenium. Under Tiberius, and under his impulse, the cohorts assemble. Outside the old Servian walls, a single camp is built, the Castra Praetoria. Walls rise into Rome's sky, towers, gates, ditches. The sound of hammers rings out like a new oath. There, under his hand, the force closest to the emperor is concentrated. No longer scattered through the streets, but packed behind ramparts, ready to deploy. This consolidation changes everything. From now on, a single order can set in motion a compact, disciplined, armed force, which lives, eats, and sleeps beneath the same roof of tile and steel. And this order, it is he who gives it. Prefect of the Praetorium, guardian of the gates, master of the night watches. Every approach to Tiberius passes through his eyes, his ears, his paid men. Tiberius, slow, mistrustful, reserved, begins to lean on him. In judicial cases, in political affairs, it is Sejanus's voice that slips into his ear. The trials for majestas, those prosecutions for lèse majesté, where speech itself can become a crime, multiply. Who must be accused? Who must be spared? Who, in the assembly of senators, carries within himself the seed of a possible rival? Sejanus suggests. Tiberius listens. In the Senate, some already bow toward him. Old senators, others ambitious, knights eager for protection come to take shelter under his cloak. They sense which way the wind is blowing. They flatter, offer, commit themselves, bind themselves. A new court forms, not around the throne, but around the prefect's chair. Others, on the contrary, stiffen. In the imperial family, glances grow hard. Drusus the Younger, Drusus Julius Caesar, is the son of Tiberius, his presumptive heir. Direct blood, promise of continuity. In him, the natural order of generations is reflected. But in the year 23, this order breaks. Drusus dies. Officially, fate, illness, the hazards of the flesh. But murmurs arise. Tacitus reports, with the sharp gravity of those who have outlasted their time, that Livilla, wife of Drusus, Claudia Livilla, and Sejanus himself may have plotted a crime. The poison is said to have slipped into the cup. A furtive gesture, a sip, a future emperor who collapses. The accusations emerge later, after the fall of the prefect, when tongues are loosened and take their revenge. But the story, taken up, amplified, transformed into certainty by the generations, locks Sejanus in a dark light. With Drusus's death, a void opens near Tiberius. A void in his heart, a void in his succession. And into this void advances, without a sound, the shadow of the prefect. He consoles, advises, shows himself indispensable. He slips not only into the role of the arm, but into that of the confidant. More than that, he dares a new dream. He looks at Livilla, widow of Drusus, granddaughter of Augustus by marriage, living fragment of the imperial house. He desires her, not only for herself, but for what she represents. If he marries her, he, a knight, fastens his destiny to the very house of the Caesars. He crosses a boundary no one of his order has ever crossed. He asks, Tiberius himself. In a moment that Tacitus fixes as one engraves a verdict in stone, Sejanus sets out his plan. That the prince give him Livilla, that the equestrian order be united through him to the ruling family. But Tiberius refuses. He invokes the difference in rank, the possible fury of the people, the scandal of the nobles who would see a knight enter the blood of Augustus. He answers with political reasons. Perhaps, behind them, a more intimate suspicion is already hiding. Agrippina, daughter of Agrippa and Julia, granddaughter of Augustus, widow of the glorious Germanicus, carries in her person the most ardent memory of the founding house. At her side live her sons, Nero Caesar, Drusus Caesar, and further off, still in the light shadow of childhood, Gaius, whom they call Caligula. Together they form a luminous arc. For the people, for the army, these names shine more brightly than that of Tiberius, withdrawn into his prudence. Between Agrippina and Sejanus, hatred grows. Tacitus describes this hostility as a fire that smolders beneath the ashes of ceremonies. She sees in him the instrument of oppression, the hand that closes the doors of Tiberius, the poison that troubles the emperor's soul. He sees in her a hearth of legitimacy, a possible rallying point for those who would want another prince, another future. Accusations of conspiracy start to drift about. The crime of Maestus, that supple weapon, falls like a scythe on Agrippina's associates. Files are assembled, testimonies torn out, informers rewarded. In the year 27, the blow falls. Agrippina the Elder is exiled to Panditaria, island of rocks and winds where the empire likes to forget those who are in the way. Nero Caesar is sent to Ponza. The two of them waste away there. The sea around them replaces the crowds of Rome. Their voices are lost in the crash of the waves. They die in captivity, far from all eyes. Drusus Caesar, another son of Agrippina, is in his turn imprisoned. He will also die, in stone and shadow. Thus, one by one, the direct heirs of the house of Germanicus fade away. With each disappearance, Sejanus's position grows stronger, like a tide that gains ground with each wave. While these lives are breaking, Tiberius withdraws. In 26, he leaves Rome. He heads for Capri, a steep island, refuge of rocks and caves, where the sea circles every thought with a blue ring. There, far from the tumult of the forums, he governs by letters. Missives depart, sealed, for the Senate, for the magistrates, for Sejanus. The prince no longer appears. His figure dissolves, distant, behind the veil of the gulf. He receives ambassadors. He examines candidates for office. He weighs promotions, dismissals, accusations. Each day, the Senate turns toward him to know what the emperor wants. And what the emperor wants is what the prefect conveys. The distance between Capri and Rome becomes the distance between authority and the one who holds its key. Trials for Maestus multiply further. Senators and knights, seized with fear, denounce before they can be denounced. The rumor of the night becomes substance for accusation. A word slipped during a banquet turns into a rope in the Tullianum. Tacitus sees in this era a forest of denunciations, where a man walks without knowing whether he is not already treading on the grave of his own name. In the midst of this climate, Sejanus receives honors that, for a knight, would be unimaginable in other times. In the year 31, he is suffect consul, with Tiberius himself. For a moment, the fasti engrave side by side the name of the prince and that of the prefect. The equestrian order crosses the sacred boundary of the consulship. Statues are raised in his honor in various cities. Processions greet him. Flatteries take on an almost religious tone. In the most secret conversations, some whisper that a marriage with the imperial house might yet be arranged. That, perhaps, one day, the name of Sejanus would appear not as that of an arm, but as that of a successor. Nothing is written, nothing is proclaimed, but everything is alarming. Ancient authors note this imbalance. Never has a Praetorian prefect concentrated so much military and political power. The Praetorian camp, the trials, access to the prince, the honors, everything converges on a single man who is not emperor. Rome senses dimly that a thread is stretched too tight, that it is going to snap. On Capri, Tiberius withdraws further into his thoughts. His letters become more ambiguous. Before the Senate, they still sometimes praise loyalty, evoke the faithfulness of those around him. But between the lines, something changes. Suspicions surface. Double-edged words appear, like those blades that gleam without one yet knowing into whose flesh they will sink. It is said that Tiberius secretly consults a few men whose judgment he esteems. Marcus Coccius Nerva, a skilled jurist, and Lucius Aelius Lamia, a figure close to the prince, hear his questions. What to do with a favorite who, in his name, weaves a net so dense that even the emperor might find himself caught in it? Distrust, slow at first, becomes resolve. He too is a knight. He too a man of the shadows. Tiberius chooses him, not to raise him into the light, but to make him the knife kept hidden in the sleeve. He appoints him to a position connected with the guard, thus preparing the handover. According to Tacitus and Cassius Dio, this appointment is not a simple administrative move. It is the first gesture of the trap. From now on, there are two possible prefects on Rome's horizon. One, Sejanus, at the height of honors. The other, Macro, still in the penumbra, but already bearing within him the emperor's secret order. Between them, invisible, a fracture line takes shape. At the beginning of the year 31, Rome does not yet know that this line will soon be drawn tight until it snaps with a crash that will shake the whole Principate. The statues of Sejanus still shine in the sun. His supporters crowd at his door. His enemies keep silent, stifling their fear and their resentment. The Praetorian Guard keeps watch, loyal to the one who commands it. On Capri, Tiberius writes, he weighs each word. He prepares a letter whose reading the entire city will hear. A letter that begins in ambiguity, slides towards suspicion, and ends as a verdict. Macro, silent, stands ready to march on Rome. In the Senate, a few men, Memmius Regulus and Gaius Graecinus Laco, receive scraps of the truth. They are warned that imperial confidence has changed sides. They wait. They feign ignorance. The rest of the assembly, for its part, moves toward the fatal day without knowing it. The empire holds its breath. One man believes he holds the world in his hand. Another, on a wind-battered island, tightens his fingers around the invisible thread that still links him to Rome. Between them, the Praetorian Guard, that force which can make and unmake destinies, still hesitates. The date approaches. The 18th of October in the year 31 rises on the horizon. The son of Apollo, without knowing it, is about to shine on the most brutal metamorphosis of fortune seen in the reign of Tiberius. A man will enter the Curia Julia that day as consul, adorned with honors, followed by many clients. He will leave it without title, without escort, without breath.